seated. Councilors, any disclosure of pecuniary interest? None declared. Thank you. I will entertain a motion then to approve the agenda as circulated. Let's get your pen out here. Okay, moved by Councilor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Lamb. Any discussion? Sorry, one correct.
It's circulated with the addition of the one item.
Oh, yes, you're correct. I guess when I'm saying circulated, I'm thinking what's in front of us, but the public, there is an item 11.5 dealing with our response to the coronavirus situation, pandemic. So that's added as item 11.5 to the agenda, where it's proposed to be. So anyway, all those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. We don't have the presentations or delegations that are on the agendas. I guess the folks have decided to stay away. So that brings us then to item 5.1, which is relates to the Nash's consent agenda. And I see that Mr. Nash is here this evening. Just by way of explanation, I trust you all, councilors, you all seen what this is about, but the original, the decision of the LPAT was rendered in May of 2019, and the conditions, the time to satisfy the conditions is a year from then, which means that they would have until May 17th of 2020. That's a little tight for them to do, I'm sure, for them to do the things that they need to do to satisfy those conditions. So what we're asking is that we agree to the planning board extending the timeline for another year, which is the most that we can extend it under the Planning Act currently, according to John Jackson. So I'll read the motion and see if we can get a mover and seconder. Whereas Scott and Garth Nash have a provisional consent number B02-2018 that was approved by the local planning appeal tribunal, and whereas the consent will lapse on May 17th, 2020 unless an extension is available, and whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby supports an extension to the provisional consent. Now therefore be it resolved that Council has no objection to the amendment of the conditions of the Nash consent provided for in B02/2018, such that the consent will not lapse for up to 1 year to allow the applicants to obtain a docking permit for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and to fulfill all the requirements of the local planning appeal tribunal to the satisfaction of the municipality of Whitestone. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Brian moves. Seconder? Councilor McEwen? Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Lamb?
Yeah, I have no problem with the extension. In the wording in the last paragraph, does that also include, I assume that Mr. Nash will have to get a permit from our own municipality for a dock permit? It doesn't specifically say that, because all he has to do is get M&R
Mr. Mayor.
CAO?
Yeah, our mayor knows as much about it as I do, but yes, a dock permit will be required. So we didn't want to list all of the requirements,
Okay,
just
but
simply.
the requirements are in here in terms of, when it says to fulfill all the requirements, that's part of
Yes.
it.
Right,
Okay.
and to the satisfaction of the municipality of Whitestone, which we added in.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor McGinn?
Can we ask Mr. Nash a question?
Sure. Richard?
Good evening. Well, just curious in your mind, are you feeling comfortable where we're at with this? I know it's been quite a circuit.
Yeah, it's been a very long, road, and trying to reach out to Ministry of Natural Resources will take some time, is what we're guessing. I think George and Michelle and I met once or 2 times, I think, in November, December, and about there. And during those discussions, there was talk about what you guys had expected would provide versus what we had expected. And part of this process that we're going through now is to see if we can accommodate what you guys would like to see. And that is just, I'm not sure when we're going to hear back, but I do know if we hear back and there's some stuff that the ministry wants us to do the dock, we couldn't do a docking area until after a fish habitat time or something like that, which would be July or August, I think it's the middle of July. And that's why when we started talking, we said that we need more time knowing that. So that's why we kind of asked for this to be brought up.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anything else? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Please indicate. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Well, next on the agenda, we don't have a public meeting. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda, which consists of 2 items. So I'll read the motion. Whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the consent agenda consisting of council and committee meeting minutes. And there are 2 of them, the regular council minutes for the minutes for the regular council meeting of February 18th, 2020, and the minutes of the special council meeting of February 19th. Was a budget meeting, as you recall. And then the second item is the unfinished business that's listed on page 3 of the agenda. So, can I get a mover and seconder for approval of the consent agenda? Councilor Gordon Matthews moves, seconded by Councilor Lamb. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I should have asked, I guess, if there's anything that you want to pull out for discussion of those items. All right, I will now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives and approves the items contained in the consent agenda dated March 16, 2020. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And I guess there are no matters arising from the consent agenda? All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Sub-point 2, is that covered by the same motion? Or will 7.2 unfinished business be viewed, or you're asking me?
Well, it is part of it, but if there is something that, did you
Well, I was just curious if we could have a bit of an update on those, maybe we can't plan it on here tonight, so I just hoping for a little bit of info. Since we're only having a meeting once a month, a lot of times just to go by. If there's any information moving forward on the road development, number one there, private road development, and the land use on vacant lands. I guess that was a staff item. I don't know if staff has had a chance to even review that yet.
Madam CAO, I'll ask you, I'm not aware that there is anything on items 1 or 2. Item 3, the progress is as it says there. That a bylaw was drafted by the committee and is under review, and I guess it will come forward in a future meeting, hopefully soon. Number 4 is still a ways away. Number 5, we are working on, and we will have a detailed report on that at the time that we consider the budget. Well, we'll have it before that, but you'll have all the information. We're just finalizing a few things. So, but about 1 or 2, Madam Clerk, would you care to comment?
If I may, there should be an update in there. I'm not sure why it was missed. Perhaps a cut and paste issue. There was direction from council to staff to hold a public meeting, and I believe it was intended to be advertised in June and happen sometime in July or August. I don't have the exact information, but I will get that to council. I'm just looking at a previous agenda to see if that was placed in there. But there was direction for a public meeting and to ensure that the seasonal people would have, one, firstly, notice of it, and secondly, the ability to attend. So I need to make sure that piece gets updated based on council direction from a previous meeting. So I'm kind of looking through a previous meeting agenda here. I don't have it with me, but I'll make sure that that information is emailed to council, and in the next council agenda, it's updated in the unfinished business.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just to note that we had been asking for a final report from our consultant, and that was scheduled for December, so time is moving along. I don't think it'll move any quicker as the next few months progress, the way things are starting out as a lot quicker, so we don't lose sight of it if we can do something with it.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on then to number 8, which is the accounts payable? Or other. Oh. I have it, it just has the old, it has the original number on it, but that's okay. I was going to say I didn't have a motion for it, but I do. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, that the council of the corporation of the municipality of Whitestone hereby approves accounts payable in the amount of $231,632.26 and payroll in the amount of $56,792.84 for payment. Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Don Matthews. Questions or discussion? Councillor Lamb.
I have 2 of them, and they're both on the first page. Andrew Bushler, snow plowing. We usually put where that is, like the helipad or whatever. So I guess my question is, we paid him $1,525. Where was he snow plowing? I just noticed later on, we're paying someone for like helipad, and it says helipad, but this says nothing.
This was signed off by Brian Sheridan. And it's not specific, which I agree it should be. I believe it's in the village area. So this was work that was done in a little bit in December and the remainder in January. It says nine trips. So I'm assuming there may have been a shortage of staff and we hire a local person that would do some snow plowing to help out if need be.
Could you clarify that back to staff, please?
I will.
Or back to me at least?
I will, for sure. Mhm.
My second question is on the same page. Ray Motors, it says repairs to the Silverado, and it's in the amount of $82.51, total bill $91.62.88. That seems like a lot of repairs. The Silverado's an older truck, right?
That was related to an accident that happened at the landfill site with the vehicle. And it was determined the best course of action was not to go through insurance, but to actually pay out ourselves.
And we haven't been told any of the details of the accident, or we have, and I missed it.
I can take care of that enclosed.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
What year is it, do you know? The truck, is it like 10 years old or 5 years old?
It might say on the invoice. Let me see if it does. The 2015.
It's not that old.
It's not that old, no.
Just seems, okay. Okay, I'll talk to it in close, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, can I call the motion call the question to approve the accounts payable, please? All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Next, we have two staff reports, which are both here for information. We get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives report FIN 2020-02, 2019 Council Remuneration and Expenses Report for information. Councilor Brian Matthews moves, seconded by Councilor Woods. Any comments about this? You've seen this report before. I trust it's a requirement that we publish it every year.
I have a question on my own expense side of it. There's an expense of $2,538. Biggest portion of that was the Over Conference. And I didn't have the actual papers to back that up in total because some of that expense was charged, I believe, through the corporate card for the booking of the conference, which was, I believe, pretty pricey, $1,200 or something for that conference. And then there was the room, and there was the parking, and then there was a couple meals, and then traveling. So a big portion of that $2,500 is that conference. I just can't recall the charge for the conference itself. This just seems to be kind of steep. Would there possibly been a couple people's application or payment put on my expense side there? Or is that's $2,227 to go to the conference. That's quite a bit of money,
And
really.
that was in February of 2019, it was over?
2019, yes. So just out of curiosity, I'm just thinking, I know when I was at the conference, there was discussion brought forward to combine the good roads and the Old Breath. And it was being voiced pretty heavily by small municipalities, smaller than ours and more remote distance ways from ours, where they had to travel by airplane and all kinds of things. And it didn't really trig to me that they'd probably be looking at $4,000 or $5,000 to go to a conference, potentially, from far north to Toronto. So it is pretty pricey to go to these conferences. I'm just wondering what the accuracy of the total amounts. You wouldn't have that information in front of you.
I do, Mr. Mayor, through you. So that 253825 represents not only the OGRA piece, which it appears to be about $1,800.
$1,800.
And that would be, there's another, there's some mileage, there's some meals, and other mileage that's related to other activities that you've attended on behalf of the municipality. So I have a complete listing for you and for the other councillors, which adds up to that 2,500. So that's not just the OGRA conference. That includes other activities that you have participated in on behalf of the municipality. I can share this with you afterwards.
I added up my expense reports that I had on hand, and it looked like my mileage claims, and one was out of the area I went to, but $100 some. So it was representing $260 or something. Expenses apart from that one conference. So just
We can review this again. This is the information I received from the treasurer, but we're happy to revisit it if you think there's more information to share.
I'm more interested than anything. I'm not complaining or trying to justify it totally, other than it's a pretty large sum, I think, to go to a conference. Anyway, thank you.
Just as a point of information, we did not in fact go in 2020, no one from here attended. Am I right?
That is correct. Nobody from the organization went to OGRA in 2020, but our road superintendent did attend OGRA. Of course, his expenses are separate from the council expenses. He attended with you in 2019.
Thank you. I think you answered when you said the fee was $1,800.
Well, it says 1818, and that says
Yeah.
course/hotel/parking. And there would have been a separate mileage charge, and then various mileage charges for other activities, like I say, that you've attended.
Councilor Land?
Yeah, a couple questions on the donation policy. That's up.
I'm sorry, we haven't got to it yet.
Oh, I thought we were doing both. Okay.
We're going to come to that in just a second, if you don't mind. Anything else about the remuneration and expenses report from council? You want to call the question then? All those in favor of proceeding? Thank you. I guess it's really, what we're doing is we're not only receiving it, but it becomes a public document at this point. I hope everybody understands that. All right, that's number 9.1. Number 9.2 is the staff report on, and it is simply a request for approval of donations. Normally speaking, well, anyway, we'll let me try for a motion here. That the council of the corporation of the municipality of Whitestone hereby receives report FIN 2020-03, request for approval of 2020 donations, and that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Whitestone hereby approves the following 2020 donation requests. And there is a list of them, which is, you can see there, so I won't read them all, but so we can have a little bit of discussion. Can I get a move and a second, please? Moved by Councilor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Woods. Thank you. We can have some discussion. Councilor Lamb, you wanted to start?
Yeah, sure. I think in talking with the clerk today that the Whitestone Conservation Association needs approval in order to move on. Normally, I think this is all approved when we pass the budget in like May or something like that. So I have no problem with council wants to approve all these tonight or after a debate. I guess we can, but it truly is kind of a budget item or part of our budget. And this year, I guess, the initial run through the budget was a 5.8 or 5.9% increase in taxes, which is steep. I think necessary, but steep. So it concerns me when I look at all the donations that they're going up, from $5,700 to $8,700. So when I look down the list, I see, for instance, the Rotary Club of Perry Sound. They run that ball tournament, of which, and they're certainly a good organization, and they came out and they talked to us and whatever. I don't think that this is the year that we can take last year's first-time donation of $500 and make it $1,750. I'd much rather, if we have donations, see them going to our local community. So I don't mind supporting the $500 again, but I think we can easily save $1,250 there. So, I'll only point out that the $500, and it's not big enough money, to the Stocky Center is the first time in the 12 years I've been on council that we will have given to the Stocky Center that I can recall. They constantly sort of, or every 2 years, put in requests, but we haven't historically anyway, donated there, because that can be a slippery slope in terms of now we need roofs, and now we need whatever. They didn't ask for our input when they put this thing up, and they obviously have a bit of a red herring, I think it's a great facility, but it's a cost drain on Perry Sound. So if we want to give $500, I guess we might get $500, but it is the first time. And the Ard Bay Community Club, I guess I've asked for $1,500 instead of $1,000. I'm very much in support of the Ard Bay Community Club, but I can't ever recall us increasing that $1,000 over the years. So if they want $1,500, I assume they have good reasons for it. So that's all. Thank you. Oh, one more. The Perry Sound Area Community Business and Development Center is an economic development initiative. And I, for years, have argued that our contribution to any of these places in terms of their total community ask of all the 7 communities is in the 5 or 6% area. And I think that's been sort of proven out by, the contribution, for instance, to the Chamber of Commerce. We used to give more when we did an analysis of populations and impact values and all that kind of thing. They adjusted it downward. So I certainly want to pay our fair share to some of these things. The Economic Development Committee, you'll notice that Keller pays $550 a year, and we upped ours to $1,100. I think in 2019, but certainly may have been 2018. I'm not sure. But so I just comment on that. I still believe that we should be giving what we may owe, as opposed to a bigger share. So we're a small community with some really hard economic decisions. Thank you.
Other questions or comments, Councilor McEwen?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think we're well within our budgeted amount, certainly from 2019, where we were considerably below our budget. We're approaching more what the 2019 budget was in actual fact, if I recall. I understand where Council Lamb's counting on a couple of them. I can't recall the direct request of $1,750 as one from the museum, or the Rotary. It's the Rotary. I know we had a presentation from them, and there were some different amounts that you could pay. As for the, which was the other $500 one there, the new one, that would be the Stocky Center. And as I recall, it's kind of based around a sponsorship of an event, and the municipality would be recognized during that event. I could be wrong on that, but I remember being at the Stocky Center and seeing municipalities being recognized for a contribution and a portion of the sponsorship for an event. So I don't know if it's something that's unusual or beyond our realm. It's only $500. It seemed to me there was a need for ARPIG to communicate, well, from a request point of view, to go up beyond $1,000. Kind of going back in our memories to just look at this little blank piece of paper here. Look at the requests.
Yeah, if I could just comment on a couple of things. The draft budget, well, the budget that we had for these donations last year was $7,400. And the draft budget for this year was $7,400. When it was first presented to us a month ago, I'm not sure that the Whitestone Conservation Association request rightfully sort of belongs in this list, but it's because it's a little different, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But the other comment I was going to make is that as far as ARPIG is concerned, you'll recall that each year for many years we have held an August meeting in ARPIG for which we paid them a kind of like a rental fee. And I don't think it was $500. I think it was maybe $200 or $250 or something. But we did pay that. And of course, this past year we did not have that meeting because of the death of Mayor Armstrong, and so they didn't get a small piece, albeit a small piece of revenue that they would have got. So and they have a fair bit of expense to maintain that building. So I would just put that out to you for information. Councillor Gorman Matthews.
Yeah, I was just going to say that they need a new water heater. That's the additional expense for insurance.
Well, thank you. I knew there was
I could maybe add to that if you don't mind. It says the purpose of the grant, our hot water tank needs to be replaced and our furnace needs servicing so it can be used year round. That was, and their request was $1,000 to $1,500, and Pat obviously referenced the $1,500 here. It sounds like it's a special year for the club.
Sure.
Councillor McGinn.
Yeah, with respect to the Whitestone Conservation Association, this is like 1/3 of the request, a three-year request, and council's pretty much agreed to it, as I understand. And it doesn't reflect that, it's just $1,105 for one time. Is there something that's substantiated in the next 2 years?
If I may, they describe the project funding. So it says total budget $3,315, and then $1,105 per year is which they have put on their donation grant application form. So our policy reflects grant / donation. It doesn't necessarily differentiate itself in the application form.
So what I'll take some more questions, but once we're finished, I think what I'd like to do is just go down the list and perhaps you want to suggest alternate treatment of these. We might as well do it since we've spent this much time on it, we might as well finish it. So Councillor Gorman Matthews first.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to just go by which one I can wait. I just want to say that for the Rotary Club, I would support the 500 again, not the full ask. But, you know, if we're going to do one by one, then which way we talk.
Well, just the ones that you think should be changed.
That'd be the one I want to.
Is there support for leaving that at the $500 level? Would you like to change that number in the list? This seat, nodding, all right, so, go ahead.
I can recall some need to increase it from 500 or potentially at least a request to need. But keeping in good faith with them, if we increase it slightly to 750, something like that.
When they presented to us, they had a formula of what and this was in connection with, if I'm not mistaken, with the slope pitch, right? Yeah.
You would get your name on the wall.
The bridge.
And then they set the name on the wall behind the stage.
Yeah.
That price.
So they had a price break, and I honestly don't know, but
This still gives us recognition, and we're still supporting them.
Yeah.
I don't think we need
Okay.
a lot of extra from us.
well, okay. So at the moment I have it at 500. Is everyone okay with the Whitestone Conservation Association's request? Can I assume that? Ready for that? The next one was the Charles W. Stockey Center. We haven't done this one before. Are you content to leave it there, or do you want to? Remove it? Councilor Lamb.
If Councilor McEwen is right, we may well be that this is an event whereby we would recognize that event, et cetera. I think that's one set of circumstances that will weigh in my decision. If this is related to their budget and saying, hey, we just need help from all the area municipalities, the slippery slope is catching up with us out here in Whitestone. So if it's related to an event, I don't have a problem, right, where you go in and we would be recognized, as you said. That kind of thing. But if we're going to start down the road of contributing to their operational deficit, then I wouldn't support it because I don't know what's coming down the road. So do they tell us that?
Yes, I can give you a bit of information. They give talk about the wide range of activities the Stockey Centre provides. And then it simply says requested contribution from Whitestone $500 or would appreciate any amount. So they don't link it to a specific activity. They talk about amounts self-funded from fundraising, and they talk about the different events, but I'm not seeing anything here that would indicate that it's a contribution to an activity that is linked to Whitestone or specific.
Is there a wish to remove it, or
I wish to.
can I just get a sort of a straw, an indication straw?
I'm fine with removing it.
I'll go with the flow, but I would personally keep it.
All right, we'll test that in a minute. Okay, so. And the last one that really was pulled out for discussion was the Art Bay Community Club. We are content to leave that as, sorry,
Yeah.
Clerk, you wanted to?
Yeah, I did, Mr. Mayor. There was a little bit of discussion about the CB and DC. And what I can share with you is that Whitestone has contributed $1,100 since 2013 with the exception of 218, where Whitestone contributed $550. McKellar has contributed $500 since 213, and I have varying amounts that other municipalities have contributed.
Councillor Knapp?
Yeah, I can now remember the conversation. It was reduced from 1,100 to 550 based on what the justification that I talked about. Then it went back up in 219. And, I'm not against economic development, right? What I'm primarily putting forward is that we, as I said, we pay our fair share, but not more than our fair share. And you can think of ramifications when it comes to anything from pools to anything else. But, is this a hill I'm going to die on? No. We want to give 1,100. I guess we want to give 1,100. We don't have an economic development committee per se, and so maybe the 1,100 is more fitting, right? We used to have a committee, and I would have supported a budget for them as opposed to necessarily this. Thank you.
Councillor Gill?
Yeah, Madam CEO, is the $1,100, would that be for recruitment, for operating monies or what is that money used for? What is it representing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this $1,100 is specific to the CB&DC, the Community Business and Development Center. The economic development piece, which is the CINO committee, is sort of in flux right now because we've applied for FedNor funding. The 3-year program has ended, so we're applying for 3 more years. That's a different contribution that's actually in the budget. That's a yearly contribution around the $6,000 mark. So this $1,100 is strictly for CB&DC to support the Community Business and Development Center, which in turn supports small businesses and entrepreneurs as they find a way to finance their ideas. So the 2 committees are linked because it's all about economic development and developing the communities. But this money is specifically for the operating of the CB&DC organization.
I feel we're very advantaged to have this operation in Parry Sound. I know we've been on again, off again, and now I guess you represent us as community representative. The outreach they have through housing and through businesses and the different works that they're involved in, running, was it on a trade show type thing, cooperation with other organizations. They do a heck of a lot of work, I think, for the community, so I support staying with the 1,100.
Thank you.
And just finally, when we were putting in for funding for the library expansion, we got the training grant, and there was a chap I know in Parry Sound who worked very closely on the FedNor element of the grant. And I know that, for instance, because my wife's on that committee, that he's very helpful in going over all the documents, making sure we were all in line and saying the right things, and was lobbying the FedNor to get that grant, which I sincerely hope we get. Is that from this place?
Not specifically, no. He works for the Economic Development Committee, which is the steering committee that all the municipalities contribute into. And we all sit on the all the CAOs sit on the steering committee, and I happen to be the chair this year. It sort of rotates through. The now, that gentleman you were speaking of, he actually has an office in CB&DC simply because we pay CB&DC, the steering committee pays him to be there, and they run the payroll through. So there's an understanding of, there's a linkage, but not specifically would he have worked for CB&DC.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to run down the list quickly so we can, I have Whitestone Conservation Association at $1,105. Let me know if you, stop me if you disagree with these. The next one, West Perry Sound District Museum at $416. Agree with that? Rotary Club of West Perry Sound is at $500. Correct? Sorry, I gotta write that down, 500. Rod Gun Club is at $500. Town of Perry Sound, Charles W. Stockey Center is at $0. Perry Sound Area Community Business and Development Center at $1,100. Perry Sound Area Chamber of Commerce at $845. Dunchurch Agricultural Society at $500. Art Bay Community Club at $1,500. Perry Sound High School Bursary, the Louise Woods Bursary at $500. And Whitestone Lake Citizenship Award at $50. Okay, so if I total that, that's going to,
I think it's 1750 off of 8766.
I don't know, it's 1750 plus 500 off. That's 2250, right?
No, we cut it, I think it was 1250 and 500 for a total of 17.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You're absolutely right. It's minus 1750. You're absolutely correct. So. Just going to use the calculator here.
Can I make a
I
comment?
don't trust myself anymore. 17, sorry. Go ahead,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we never mentioned the Ralphanian Legion, who in 2019 received $340. Did they not put in a request this year? Is that why it's zero?
That's correct. There was no, through you, Mr. Mayor, there was no request received from the Legion as of yet.
I can just tell you something else about, sorry, that's jogged my memory about something else about the Legion. We used to charge the Legion property taxes. And the province in 2019 passed legislation that legions do not pay, Legion branches do not pay property taxes. So we actually gave them a refund because they already paid it. So that may be why we didn't get a request.
I'm sure it was.
So,
Okay.
so this was 8766. Oops. -66 50 equals. So that comes to $7,016.
That's right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that's actually a little bit less than the 7,400 that we had in the budget earlier. All right, so can I bring the motion back then with those particular numbers that we just read? And ask, and call the question, all those in favor of that being our budget figure? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And pulling out Alice Newton ahead of that. Whoops, sorry. Now, that takes us to number 10. which is bylaws, and the first bylaw, bylaw number 08/2020, is a bylaw to enter into an agreement with the town of Prairie Sound for an intermunicipal tax roll agreement. This is to enter into an intermunicipal tax roll agreement with the town of Prairie Sound, but anyway. Here's the motion I'm looking for, that bylaw 08/2020 being a bylaw to enter into an intermunicipal tax roll agreement with the town of Prairie Sound be read a first and second time this 16th day of March 2020. And further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 16th day of March 2020. So, can I get a mover and seconder for this, and we'll see if there are questions. So, Councillor Gorham Matthews, Councillor Woods seconds. Does everybody understand what this is about? Anybody have questions about that? Councillor Lamb?
I think I do, but maybe I can give a brief explanation. I take it we're collecting our own fines now or something, and we want to now go through Prairie Sound or something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I'll try to be brief. When a fine goes into default, there's different default triggers, but after day 75, when you hit day 76, the Provincial Offences Act gives the provincial offences folks lots of options, and one of them being you can tax roll. They use collection agencies, and they do all sorts of things. Sometimes they withdraw driver's licenses. So they're trying to find a way to be a little bit more assertive in collecting fines. And adding it to the tax roll is one of those methodologies. But there's some limitations. There's 3 requirements to add it to the tax roll, and all of those requirements have to be met. One of them being they have to be the sole owner of the property. So if you're issued a ticket, and there's other owners on the property, then we can't tax roll it. It can only be, it's only if you're the sole owner. So that has limitations. And as you noted at the end of the memo, on average, Whitestone sees about a dozen defaulted fines, and defaulted means that they're past the 75 days, and probably approximately 1 will qualify for tax rolling. So it just gives the POA one more option to get the money. And of course, there's a sharing of revenue when fines are collected.
And can I just clarify something in connection with Councillor Lamb's question? All of the POA offenses are collected by the Prairie Sound POA office. We haven't had an agreement with them for many years that they collect them. The problem is they don't, without this agreement that we're bringing forward tonight, they don't have the ability to go and they can't ask us to add it to the roll and collect the money on their behalf. So what it means is that some of these fines, and it might only be 1 or 2, but it might be a substantial amount of money. Some of the fines are not, we're not talking traffic tickets here, we're talking, because traffic tickets typically, if you don't pay them, when you go to renew your license, you're not going to, so they're going to get you for that. But you can have Provincial Offences Acts under Forest Fire Protection. You can have Provincial Offences Act under the Environmental Protection Act and so on. And that you could get a fine for something there like in $10,000, $30,000, something like that. And it might even be a corporation. And if it happens, the issue is if it happens to be in Prairie Sound, if it happens to be in Whitestone, until we would sign this agreement, nobody will go after it. The ones that are in Prairie Sound, they'll go after it, right? And with other municipalities so they're trying to get agreements with the other municipalities so that regardless of where it is, it can be collected. And we will, of course, then, that increases the amount of money that we get back, our share of the POA revenue. So it is in our interest to do it.
Sure.
Does that help? Okay. Any further discussion? Can I call the question then? All those in favor? Thank you. That's, bylaw is passed. So we will enter into the agreement. Item 10.2 is a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk. We've talked about this before. Can I get a mover and seconder that bylaw 13/2020, being a bylaw to appoint Judith Wines as deputy clerk, be read a first and second time the 16th day of March 2020, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 16th day of March 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kuhn, seconded by Councillor Woods. Discussion. Do you wish to comment, Madam CAO Clerk?
I guess I could, Mr. Mayor. We had this discussion in closed about the moving this lady from a contract position to a full-time position, and in doing so, she would take on the role of deputy clerk. This gives council a little bit of flexibility in case something happens to me. I break my leg or I'm unable to attend a meeting. You always need to have a clerk at a meeting. So this bylaw will make that official. She'll be the deputy clerk, and as of today, March 16th, she is in a full-time role with the municipality, full-time permanent.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate. Thank you. Reference 10.2. Okay, so some business items. Sorry, I'm just looking at this here. Okay. Item 11.1 is simply a report for information on the, this is the York Street bottle shed, financial report. You saw the one from the Lions Club relative to All's landfill site at a previous meeting. So, can I get a motion that council receives the Whitestone Lake Central School bottle shed financial report for 2019 for information? Please. Moved by Councillor Woods, seconded by Councillor Norman Matthews. Any discussion on this? No? All those?
Just as a comment, they're congratulated as a school parent group. Association, I'm not sure if they're all parents, but the work that goes into this is exceptional. And it's noted there that the money goes to many different things that are student supported within the community, the school up there. So congratulations to them.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving this report? Thank you. That's unanimous. 11.2, District of Prairie Sound Municipal Association, the 2020 spring meeting, which is scheduled for May the 1st in Sprucedale. Doesn't actually say that in the motion, but I guess what we're looking for here is expressions of interest of people who would like to go to that meeting. Whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has expressed an interest in sending representatives to the District of Prairie Sound Municipal Association 2020 spring meeting at the Spruce Dale Community Center. And that is on May 1st, I'm right? May 1st?
One moment, I need to double check that we've
Oh,
got.
here, I can,
Yes, May 1st, according to the notice.
Yes,
May 1st. 1st, 2020. Right in there, so we've got it. Be it resolved that the following following representatives are hereby authorized to attend the 2020 spring meeting on behalf of the municipality in accordance with municipal policy regarding travel and expenses. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Gorman. Any discussion or expressions of interest? I believe the clerk was intending to go over here, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will go as a member of staff, not to take the place of any one of the councillors.
Councillor Gorman Matthews.
Yeah, I think I'm free to go that day.
May 1st?
Yep.
People can go as they like, I think. Councillor Lamb?
I'll go. My guess is by the time that comes, we won't be being held anyway, so. That isn't the reason I said I would go.
That is a distinct possibility, I would say, offhand, but in any case, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, this has nothing to do with the spring meeting, but there was a search for a location for the fall meeting, and I've offered up our community center and Whitestone to sponsor that fall meeting. It appears from the list we received that we hadn't offered up our hospitality for some time, so we'll be working on the fall meeting and taking care of that. I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, anything else about this? All those in favor of the motion? Thank you very much. That's carried. And let's see what else we have. 11.3 is a brief oral report from our CAO clerk on the WPS Smart AGM that took place a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report will be as short as the meeting. It was a very brief meeting, the annual general meeting. We don't get a lot of information when we attend. The most important thing that was discussed is the pilot project that SMART is undertaking, and it's exclusively within the boundaries of Carling Township in a highly populated area. They're trying out some new technology. We don't know, or it certainly wasn't shared with us, whether there's going to be an expansion to this project. What SMART needs is funding, and that doesn't seem to be available. They may have received a one-time fund for the project that they're doing. So we're going to watch and see if that technology works. The area CAOs are working with a couple of other organizations on broadband options. And that really was the extent of the AGM. It was very, very brief.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about that? All right, 11.4, another report from our CAO clerk, this time about the West Prairie Sound Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in 2019, there was some provincial legislation passed that required all municipalities to create a community safety and well-being plan, and it's basically a plan that will assist everyone in our community, but more particularly vulnerable people. So when they need assistance or resources for everything from housing to social assistance to mental health, this plan is available for the people that would actually be able to help them. So it's a bit of a one-stop shopping plan. The CAOs met, and we felt that one of the best ways to have this plan established, which it needs to be in place by 2021, was to work with our emergency services folks, specifically the CEMCs. And that work has started. I don't know if they've had a meeting yet. And I have had a few conversations with Kathy Whitman, who is our CEMC. And right now, I'm the alternate. There's some discussion about making someone else the alternate, but we haven't got there. I've been appointed by bylaw. So I just wanted to let council know that this plan is being worked on. It's going to be a regional group effort, and it makes sense that many of these services are regional anyway, so it doesn't make sense that Whitestone has a plan and McKellar has a plan. And as we move along this path, I'll be updating you with more information, or Kathy Whitman will. And we'll let you know how that's working. It may be on hiatus at this point. I was talking to the fire chief at Perry Sound, simply that everybody's busy with coronavirus, so it may be that the meetings are canceled for the near future, but we still need to go ahead and build this plan.
Questions, comments? All right, that brings us now to item 11.5, which, if you're following in the audience here, is not one that is not on your list of it, in your paper, so I'll talk to it for a second. Sorry, did you have a?
I can bring it up in comments for the public.
Okay, thank you. I issued a report to council earlier today just about the precautions that we might want to take with respect to the pandemic that's going on. You will probably be aware that some of our neighbors, and the list is actually expanded a little bit from the one that I circulated even earlier today, but some of our neighboring municipalities, in fact, most of them except, I would say, Perry Sound, have, for some period of time ranging from 2 to 4 weeks, have closed their facilities at the community center and their offices and libraries to the public. They have canceled meetings of committees and council meetings that they had, and various other things of that sort, in an effort to, to slow down the uptake of infection, basically, to delay the infection in Westbury Sound. And to the best of my knowledge, we still don't have any active cases in Westbury Sound, but I think that is expected to change. So, what I thought we should do tonight, rather than not do anything or try to call an emergency meeting or something, is to look at the various programs and activities that we have and decide what we should do with them, whether we want to follow suit or not. And so I produced the list that the councilors have, and it's not in, well, the first block is some council meetings, just looking ahead. We have one scheduled for Monday, April the 6th, which is a regular council meeting. It's shaping up to be a fairly busy council meeting. We have deputations or presentations, if you like, from both Molly Ross in terms of our communications plan, and Don Sanderson, the CEO of the Perry Sound Hospital. We were then going to follow on Tuesday, April 7th with our budget meeting, at which time we would expect to have the report of the auditors. They will have been in by then, and we'll know what our surplus was for 2019, and can get all that, probably as much other updated information as we're going to get. Just looking a little further ahead, Monday, April 20th, the second April meeting is a regular council meeting. That one, that is the meeting at which we could potentially award a contract for the library extension. So this is just some things that would be on the agenda. Monday, May 4th, again, getting into the awarding of contracts for, you know, our gravel and various other things, and also some projects, road projects and things of that sort. So that's kind of what the normal spring would look like. And of course, there are more meetings in May and June scheduled. There are committee meetings. We do have a few committees. The rec committee, for example, the rec committee has a meeting actually scheduled for this Wednesday, although whether it makes sense to have it or not, I don't know. I'm guessing the agriculture committee maybe has meetings planned, I don't know, and
They canceled theirs for next year.
you canceled it.
Or, oh, that's for the Agricultural Society.
Hmm? I'm talking about the committee that's
Yeah,
working
no,
on the
we're-
bylaw, right?
Yeah, we're not
You're not
meeting
meeting?
at this point.
Just with respect to meetings, I asked staff, and they have now done this, to set up for us a conference call facility that we can use to create conference calls on demand using a conferencing facility that is quite cost effective. And so we do have the ability for committees, and you know, this could apply to, for example, the cemetery board or others, if folks do not want to meet in person, or if we tell them they can't meet in person, which I guess is within the purview of council, they could still arrange to have a conference call where everybody basically phones in and they can talk about things. And you can, by the way, get the proceedings recorded so that if somebody, then download it, so if somebody wants to listen to them to get minutes and that sort of thing. So it is possible. There is a problem with us doing council meetings this way at the moment. And the problem is that well, first of all, our procedure bylaw doesn't allow for this or doesn't contemplate it. But worse than that, the Municipal Act actually has a couple of prohibitions in it. And I can go into the details if you want. But basically what it says in a nutshell is that for a public meeting, the public is still supposed to have access to the meeting, but in order for the meeting to take place, a quorum of councilors have to be present. So we could make arrangements, for example, for 2 members of council to phone in, but the other 3 members would have to physically be here because the members who are phoning in do not, or coming in remotely, do not count for quorum. So then we would. And the second thing that the Municipal Act says, by the way, is that you cannot have a closed meeting except in person. So you can't participate in a closed meeting by teleconference, period. And I took the liberty of sending a note to the Premier today saying, because they're introducing some legislation into the legislature maybe this week to deal with some COVID-19 things, saying you really should amend the Municipal Act to allow that under certain circumstances. And again, I won't go into all the details. I can show you a draft of what I think we should do to the Municipal Act to fix this. It's pretty easy, but whether of course anything will be done in response to this, who knows? We'll see. But right now we have a problem with the message to all of that is that we have a problem holding council meetings other than in person. Other things that are on this list, the community center. Some folks have closed their community centers to all activities and events, including rentals. And the clerk has a list of rentals if you want to find out what ones we have. We don't have many. And some of the ones that happen here regularly, like Diners Club and so on, are already canceled. We have the municipal office and the works garage. And what other municipalities have done with those kinds of facilities is they're essentially closed to the public except by appointment. So if you do have a reason to go there, you can phone and arrange with someone to meet with you if that's agreeable to them, to the staff. But you can't just wander in. And I guess the implication of us, for our folks with that, would be that we do have a fair number of people who pay bills by their tax bills, which we're coming into the tax payment season already there. We would like to come in and sign their check over at the counter. There are other ways, of course, you can pay, but those people will have to find those other ways. They'll either have to leave the check in the deposit box or do it using online banking or something else. We have the pavilion. Now, we're probably not going to be skating in it for too much longer, but in fact, I don't think anybody's skating in it right now. But do we say to people, no, you can't use it? Pretty hard to keep them out, I suppose, but we will have the beach as soon as the weather gets warm. Our landfill sites, are we going to do anything different there, or do they just stay open as usual? By the way, I think that's what most municipalities are doing with their landfill sites, and I'm not aware that anyone has closed those. Our roads operations, presumably would continue as usual. The library, we discussed this a little bit earlier today. I think the library board has decided that they should close. But perhaps Councilor Mann can say more to that in a minute, or the clerk. Recreation program events, we have started to cancel them. There are some more between the rec committee and the Ag Society, and I'm guessing they're all being canceled. Is that the impression I'm getting? And I did mention the Candidate Day celebrations. The purpose of this meeting that the rec committee was going to have on Wednesday was to do some more planning for Canada Day. I'm wondering if we're going to get people to engage in that kind of activity and our other partners in the community, given what's going on. So I guess I suggest to the council that there is a possibility that we might end up canceling the celebrations that we have, that we would otherwise be planning. And finally, Councillor Durham Matthews reminded me that I didn't have the thrift shop on the list. The thrift shop normally opens May 1st, am I right, or in April. And there was, I guess, the thought as to whether we want them to delay. And I haven't spoken to anybody there to see if they have any thoughts on the matter. So these are the sorts of things, and what I was hoping to do was to get a kind of a resolution on the major things, so that we can issue a press release, as our neighbors have done, most of them, and say to the public, this is what we're doing. Let them know as soon as possible, so that they know. So if I may, can I go back to the list and say, let's talk about council meetings, because those are the ones that are most under our control. Do we wish to, let's say our next regular meeting is April 6th, which is 2 weeks' time, right? So do we wish, and I probably should treat it together with the budget meeting too. But what are people's thoughts about those council meetings? Hands up over here first. So Beth, we'll just go down the table. Beth?
Sure. I think that's still a fair ways away, and a lot can happen between now and then. I would support keeping the meetings as is for now, and if things look tumultuous at that time in this community, then postpone them at that point. But pushing a budget meeting back much further, those projects that are in the budget are going to be pushed back that much further, and may not be able to be done in 2020.
Councilor Lamb?
seem to be closing things until April 6th, so for the next 3 weeks seems to be that I have. I guess my comment would be that I think we should close most things for the next 3 weeks, as other people are doing. This would be outside the 3 weeks, this would be the day of the 3 weeks. I think no matter what we do, I think the government's above our head and going to be telling us what's going to be the 6th. So I think it's not a viewpoint, but it's, you know, if they say you can't have gatherings of more than 5 people or 10 people, and this afternoon it came out, the French government said you can't even meet with family more than 10, so there was a lot of Easter, you know, celebrations and stuff like this. And I watched the television a lot today, and this thing is enormous, right? And I don't think necessarily we can overreact. So I don't mind if we keep them in there. I think by the time we get there with the canceling, I think if anything, you know, to push, say, the April 6th and the April 7th meeting off by 1 week might, you know, give us another week of, you know, give us 4 weeks instead of 3 weeks. So I support that kind of movement and keep the 20th the same, whatever. But, and that gives staff another week to prepare for that. That sort of thing. So those are the general thoughts. And we're just talking about the meeting, right?
Yeah, we're just talking about council meetings for the moment.
Okay, and not committee meetings or anything, so.
Well, we'll do committee meetings in a
Okay,
second. just
okay,
so-
thank you.
just let's talk about the council first, because that's Councilor McHugh.
Yeah, I concur with Councilor Lamb. I think going with a provincial approach with the education system where the students throughout this current week and giving 2 more weeks, it's a 3-week period that will give people a pretty good idea of where we're at. I think there's tremendous fear everywhere that, you know probably where we're going to be at. Extensions may be forthcoming. Very likely they will be. And as Councilor Lamb mentioned, could be dictated more by provincial or someone by that point, even by federal, as was noted in today's speech. The United Church has done the same approach of letting them guide with the students for a 3-week period. The multi-purpose room is closed, effective today for 3 weeks. Church, it's not determined quite yet, but potentially following the same pattern. So at least out to the April 6th, which gives us, as Council Lamb also mentioned, that we could have an extension by a week if we needed it, or maybe we're getting into some other form of communicating, depending on how things are going.
That's what it is.
I'm in agreement with it as well. April 6th, 7th, pencil in for, yeah, we're going to go, and then if we hear anything different, then we have to change it. You know, we can do it later.
Okay, well, I thank you for that. I think that that's, so we'll keep our schedule as it is for the time being and simply let people know that we're going to play it by ear. I think it is possible that we will get some, like one mechanism or another, that we will get some direction or something that allows us to have a teleconference meeting if we want, and if we have things that we need to deal with, which we could. I guess I'm not, I don't consider it a showstopper that either our bylaw or our procedure bylaw or the municipal act is preventing us from doing business. I think if we have to do business, we have to do it, and we have to do it. So, but we can always do it in that way, and that no one is put at any risk because we're basically calling it the home. We do have the facility to do that, and it actually works. I have used this particular facility extensively. It actually works pretty well for small groups. When you can hear very well on it, you know who's talking. You can take votes. And you just have you just do a roll call vote if you want to vote on something. You just either ask if anyone has any objection, or you call out the names and do it that way. So you can produce a pretty good record, which I suggest if we were to do that, we would make it available to the public. You know, the same way that we do the proceedings or else we could say, fine, you can, we'll conduct it like a regular meeting if we end up doing that. Oh, okay, what about, so I'll just make a note here, keep as is for these. And committee meetings, same thing, cancel them or for 3 weeks and see what happens after that? 3 weeks. All right. That's so for postpone for 3 weeks. Yeah, Councilor McKeown.
On the council, the actual committee meetings, do they fall in the same category as regular meetings in terms of legislation?
Yes, the municipal act basically applies to council and boards that we have, and the only board we have is actually the not the library board, sorry, the cemetery board. The library board is actually, lives underneath the Libraries Act. So it's a bit different, but, and committees.
I think more specifically, the ad hoc, I guess we call it, we've got going for the landfill. I'd like to see us, whether it's through some other non-face-to-face or whatever communication, keep it moving somewhat. Or we're going to have to change the date of implementation, certain aspects of it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thought, and I hadn't thought of that. No, it's a task force. There is no reference to task forces in the municipal act. But I don't know, my suggestion would be that the members of that group decide amongst themselves how they want to. If you're comfortable at that meeting and you actually want to meet in person, I don't know that we need to tell you not to, but if you would prefer to have a telephone conference, we can make the conference facilities available to you. Just give you the instructions on how to set it up. You decide when you want to do it. You dial the particular numbers and key the right codes into your phone and away you go. So you can do it from wherever you are, from your cell phone, your landline, or home.
So we'll wing it and see where we're at
So
next week.
that would be my suggestion for
Okay.
the landfill. Landfill task force. I'm gonna write this down on a piece of paper so I don't lose the thought here. Landfill task force. The community center. We're, I guess the real question is, do we close it to we have our own activities and we have rentals? Do we just say that they're suspended, that they're all suspended, or do we let rentals go if people want them and not have our own activities? Thoughts on that? I'll take Beth first. Again,
Okay,
just
sorry.
The general consensus seems to be among other communities is that everything is being canceled, rentals and your own activities.
I think you're right.
I agree with that. I think it should be closed at any meeting of any kind for the first 3 weeks, and then we'll do that after that.
So you would say for the 3 weeks is for now, and again, we revisit the subject in 3 weeks?
I think we're going to be revisiting everything.
Yeah. Any other opinions on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the seriousness of this situation, when we think of seniors and the people that could potentially be through the doors and touching and cleaning and keeping up to date on the cleaning process in a facility like this, it's pretty risky having those things. So I go for the almost an indefinite closure, but if it's on the same pattern as 3 week scenario, and see where we're at.
Okay,
Same with you.
good with that, thank you. All right, so we have, and I lumped them together unless you see otherwise. We don't have the same, sorry, the them is the municipal office and the works garage. We don't have the same traffic to the works garage, but we do have traffic to the works garage. People sometimes go in there just to tell the roads folks that something needs to be fixed, or they come to try to sell some supply or service or something to the road superintendent. And so, again, the pattern seems to be that they are closed to the public except by appointment. So the messaging goes out. You can always get us by phone, and if you have a need to come in and you actually have to show something to the building official or whatever, or you have to, if the building official is okay with that, you can make an appointment. I'm just using that as an example, or if you need to see the clerk or the auditors will presumably be still coming to work with our treasurer to finalize the books, and that would be a by-in appointment thing. But as far as people walking in off the street without an appointment, they can't. And I'm assuming that would apply to the prior hall as well, right?
We have a work continuity plan that we follow that you approved years ago, so yeah, it's all in there. Had our plan for years, ever since SARS actually, so we just follow that.
But the door, they can't just walk in your front door, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to be clear, because they have to go through the front door of the municipal office to get to your door, right? Unless they,
Oh, there's a side one,
oh, so they go to the side door.
ring the bell.
Okay, well, I guess that. Sorry, the CEO clerk wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, is that we'll probably move our auditors to the community center. And it's a little bit more work because we're bringing things back and forth. But as you know, our lunchroom is pretty tight quarters for the two auditors. And often I sit with them, and Pat does sit with them a fair bit. And there's people having lunch and all sorts of things that happen in that lunchroom, and it's pretty close quarters. So we'll move them up here and give people some space just for the social distancing that needs to happen.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense, and you won't have any competition for use of the space.
That's right.
Councilor Gill,
Yeah, some of the other municipalities that are grouping or combining municipal services in one, and the public can interact through email or by telephone for an appointment. Would that not include the fire department and the work center and anywhere service locations? The municipal services locations? Just think, when we put out our notice, we should cover all the facilities, not be one separate standalone.
Yeah, we probably should. Okay, anything else about those? What about the, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not in disagreement with what has been said. I think if people are making an appointment, I think you'll find that there's lots and lots of places that will have some sort of form that they'll have to sign that's saying, you know, I haven't experienced the fever, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and they have to sign that in order to participate in the appointment. So I'm sure it's readily available forms on that. So, and we have to make some things by appointment. People are going to have building permits and things like that, but they just can't, tell their builder to hold off a month or whatever. So, yeah, I'm fine. That's what he said.
I did, Mr. Mayor, I did speak to our CBO and asked him if if we did close the doors, you know, how would he manage things? And he says things are ramping up slightly at this point, but he's not too busy. He's all caught up in his building permits, and he thinks there's ways to manage the paper interaction, either through email or deposit in the mailbox. And of course, he's quite happy to still go out and do inspections. That's the easy part. So he feels quite confident that it can be managed.
Okay, thank you. Landfill sites, business as usual.
Are we skipping over the pavilion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Yes, the pavilion, I was starting to go there. Pavilion and Church Beach. What, would we simply add them to the list and say to people, they're closed? I mean, if we're talking the short term, and they're not gonna, I don't think they're gonna use them unless, if we continue to have weather like this, we could conceivably have more skating. Are we gonna say to people, don't come?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know the ice is not usable now, and I wasn't talking to anyone today to see if they could revitalize it for, it's always nice to have it during the spring break. So I just don't know if it's too far gone. We got an awful lot of warm weather to the point where I know at one point there was concrete showing at one end because the floor isn't quite level. So it may be that there is no ice and there isn't going to be any ice for the remainder of the season. But I'll find out from our staff tomorrow if there's a possibility of rejuvenating it. And then the question is, do you want people in there skating?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think they should all be closed. I don't think that the rink is resurrectable at this time. I looked at the weather for 14 days, and maybe the odd night where it's down to -5, but daytime highs are pluses. And you can't make it, we're dealing with such a crisis that you can't make an exception. You can't give a community holiday to the pavilion. I think it just has to be lumped in with everything else for a 3-week period.
Councilor Kennett.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't hear the first part of your comment there, Mr. Councilor Lamb, but I think you said to close.
Close it.
Yes, I support closing it. I think under the circumstances, potential skating is no to none. It was a combination of ice and bare concrete. The uses of that should be very, very minimal. And I can keep people away from all our facilities, all municipal buildings.
Okay, landfill, sorry.
I just want to make one comment with regards to those two facilities. Are we going to include the playground in that as well?
Good point.
3 weeks where everything makes it easier to notify people and easier for everyone to understand. If it's municipal property, we're shut down 3 weeks until further notice. Then they could, we might have to lengthen that or extend it depending on how this goes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did notice that some of the other municipalities, not necessarily here, but I think it was Reading Deep River or something like that, that they said down for 3 weeks or until further notice or something. I'm not sure that we want to go that far because I think if we want to put something outside of 3 weeks from now to say, it's now another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever. So there's been major things. Today, Alberta closed the school year, right? So that's what we could be looking at, 3 weeks. And, the peak of this is going to be July or August, so that's what I also heard today. So this is going to get worse, a lot worse before it gets better. So I think we should, sorry. You can't say you can go to the playground, but you can't go in and play a game of basketball. Right? What's the difference? So I suspect we should close it.
No, I think I guess, my only thought about that is that I'm sure that there are parents who are, for the next 3 weeks, that are looking for things for their kids to do because they can't go to school and they can't. They're off school this week and they won't be back the next 2 weeks.
Buy
But-
Netflix stuff.
Hmm?
Buy Netflix stuff.
Well, yeah, I hear you. I think the unfortunate thing is that if you have a bunch of kids playing on there and then somebody does end up with the infection and because I mean, it's impossible to keep it clean and it's also impossible, it's completely unsupervised, it's also impossible to keep the distance with kids. They're bumping into each other and anyway. Councilor Romantis.
Really, it's not something that somebody's going to be sitting over there and running over and saying, oh, get off the slide. It's more us just putting it out there that's not a good practice
Yeah.
to be using that facility. So it's not like if a family chose to go there, you could really, on a weekend, nobody would see them doing it and they could just do it. But by telling them that it's not a good practice to be in that setting, especially with all the metal on it, that's where this virus really loves to live for a long time. It's on metal surfaces. So if you're just putting it out there, that's a good idea not to do it.
But it should also include notices that it's closed, right? I mean, you could do that so that people, if they come, they know it. You could go, and I'm not suggesting we do this, you could cordon it off, right? And put some sort of, the yellow stuff, the police use or something, across the whole area with a closed sign or something like that. And people would have to be pretty, whatever, to go under that and use it anyway.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Let's just finish the list here. So we've got the landfill sites, again, as I suggested earlier, is there any change to that? So I've got continuing as usual, people seem to think that's okay. And I'm assuming the roads operations as well, we just, not that it, it doesn't involve people, it doesn't involve the public so much as it involves our staff. What about the library? What does the library board?
Well, the library board wants to close for the 3-week period. And we discussed this actually on Friday or Saturday, and they were closed today anyway, so it wasn't going to be open today. And so I will notify, I can notify Lori after this meeting that tomorrow morning she can go in but not open up. Library staff have lots to do in terms of the upcoming renovations. They can, book things in preparation for, the expansion and things like that. So they'll be kept busy. There was some talk that if this thing was extended, beyond the 3 weeks, that there could be some sort of system whereby people call in or something and say, can you give me that new James Patterson book? And they might, get that and say, yeah, meet me at the door at 12:30 or have a little bag of certain books and they just simply exchange. They can bring the books back, of course, because they can put them in the chute, right? But I don't know how this thing's transmitted, right? If you borrowed a book and brought it back and put it in the bin and someone picked it up, does that mean you could be exposed? I don't know the answer to that. So. But over the long term, there may be something that can be done, but they're basically the first 3 weeks should be shut down. It's the board's opinion.
It's already,
So-
the notice is already up there. The notice is on
The notice, I think, is,
It's on the door,
it's for the activity.
the activities.
Yeah, that was all canceled last week. All
Was
the
it?
March break
Okay.
activities is what that's talking about, not the
So
closure.
those are just the 3 months.
Yeah, just whatever they're planning for the kids this week, right? Those were canceled mid last week. So the library should follow what we're doing with everything else for 3 weeks.
So So it won't, but it won't be by appointment, like you can't pull in the library and say.
I
"I'm
don't
gonna
think the
come in
first
or
3 weeks it will be.
So the.
Because you can't stop by appointment. You can't say, I'm gonna accept your appointment, but not your appointment. Everybody just call in. They'll be filing in all the time. And,
No, I understand.
yeah, so at least for the first 3 weeks, no, nothing. It's just shut down. And Lori's gonna have to administer that on an equal basis for everyone, right? Not on an unequal basis. Yeah.
As far as books are concerned, maybe we can talk about this offline, but as far as books are concerned, rough surfaces like paper and wood and fabric and so on, the virus nanoparticles actually stick to them better than they do to glass and wood, glass and metal.
Oh.
And the problem with the glass and metal is that when you touch it, it'll come off with your finger, whereas it's less likely to happen with a book, but
But it can be transmitted.
but it can be, yeah, and I think the preferred solution you'll discover is to actually use an ultraviolet light. Pass the book underneath an ultraviolet light, which deactivates the proteins that are in it, which is what allows it to infect people. They're not like bacteria, they're not actually living particles. It's kind of an interesting thing, but that's a subject for another day. Okay, so we'll assume then that's what happens to the library. Recreation program events are again canceled for this same period and canceled until further notice, correct? Anybody disagree with that? And I mean, Canada Day celebration, we don't have to do anything on that. I just put that there to get you thinking about the fact that if Councillor Lamb articulated my view about this, based on my views. I'm not an expert, but if you look at what happened with the SARS and MERS infections, if you look at the adoption curves that were for those diseases, and SARS was a very similar, it was a coronavirus, a different strain of it, but a coronavirus like this one that caused it. We could expect this to be going on. There'll still be some infection come summertime. And so it sort of depends on what the advice are of the public, that we get from the public health people as to whether they think it's a good idea for us to be assembling on July 1st and en masse. The thrift shop, do we want to advise them to delay further, or they don't open within the 3-week period we have now, but so we could ignore them, but they won't be open in 3 weeks, so we could ignore them, right? Am I correct in saying that?
I'm not sure the exact date in April that they open.
What I was thinking is, and maybe these two councillors can help, I think they open the first weekend in May, something like that. But do they go in ahead of that to sort of organize and?
Yes, they do.
And that's what I'm wondering, within this 3 weeks, that's what they will be doing, I expect.
I don't think they should be doing that for 3 weeks.
I don't disagree. I mean, I agree. To put it
Yeah, that would
positive.
still give them a month, if it stopped in April, but.
So I'll just put it closed for 3 weeks, so we'll tell them that it's closed, and that'll rent them.
Well, Maple Line facility that we own would be closed for 3 weeks, so they can't go in.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, we just tell them, sorry, it's closed now. So that does the thrift shop. I think we're done the list. Now, I do have a motion, and I'll read it to you, perhaps you can make it now since we spent this time. It's that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives briefing note COBID 19 dated March 15, 2020 from Mayor George Comrie for information, and that effective immediately, the municipality of Whitestone introduces the following measures to limit, delay the potential spread of the novel coronavirus. And there are, on this list that I have, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there would be 16 bullet points under them, and I'll just tell you what I have as a note. So items 1 to 4, which are the council meetings, the next 4 council meetings, that we keep them as scheduled until further notice, because they don't occur in the 3-week period. So we'll simply advise folks that we're watching, we're monitoring the situation, and we'll let them know. Our committee meetings are canceled for 3 weeks. The community center is closed to all municipal events and rentals for 3 weeks. The municipal office and works garage and fire hall are closed to the public except by appointment for 3 weeks. The pavilion, Dunchurch Beach and playground are closed for 3 weeks, closed to the public for 3 weeks. The landfill sites are open as usual. Roads operations will continue as usual. The library will be closed to the public for 3 weeks. The thrift shop will be closed for 3 weeks, closed to everyone for 3 weeks. Recreation program events will be canceled until further notice, and that's it. Are you moving?
So I want to clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you have to put in the council meetings, even though there aren't any that are being canceled for 3 weeks. They're public meetings. So if we're going to get rid of everything, then we've got to get rid of public meetings for that 3-week period. You can't say, I know there aren't meetings, but you don't have to go into that kind of detail. Just shut down for 3 weeks. That's what McKellar's
Okay.
and that doesn't change the meeting schedule.
I get your point.
And the second thing I would say is it should be through April the 5th. So therefore, everything sort of back up, at least at this point, on April the 6th, which would include our meeting on April the 6th. So we should include April 6th as should be until April 5th.
Through April 5th then?
Through April.
Okay, thank you for that, Carter. That actually makes it easier. So we're getting questions. Before we take questions from the floor, can I get a motion that what I just read be the hang on.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilor Lynn. Seconded by Councilor Gorman Matthews. Now, Chief Whitman.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was going to try to get to you before you passed it. The nursing station is a municipal building. Are you going to close that, or are you going to follow the hospital's thing? Because it is a municipal building. I wanted to say that before you passed it. Now, I know the hospital did send out a bulletin today about what they were closing, but I don't remember the nursing station problem. It could have been, I might have missed it, but I don't know. It is a municipal building.
That's a very good question, and I never, it's amazing what you don't realize what all things are going on. I'll just take, my personal take on it is that the hospital should be telling us, should decide what to do. Because they're going to do it anyway. It's their staff that populate the building, and they're going to say, if they decide that they can't have the staff not populate, but working there, they say we're not going to have it. We're not going to put staff there, and it's not open. And nobody will go in. So I don't know why we would turn around and say, sorry, you can't operate the nursing station if they're prepared to operate Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the way that the information should be relayed is that the following facilities are closed. And, you know, where it says about except by appointment, or just not perhaps mention the nurse's station. So maybe we don't say we're closing all, you know, Whetstone home facilities, and that would provide an exception for the nurse's station. Certainly, it's not up to us to close the nursing station, given this environment, this situation. That's up to us.
What I was going to say is that I didn't see nothing came across my desk about the nursing station, but I can speak to our fire chief tomorrow, and we'll do a little bit more investigation. And what I can say is I have a draft press release that I've shared with the mayor, and it actually needs some wordsmithing now that we've had this discussion. So we'll work on that tomorrow, make sure it's abundantly clear what facilities are closed, and the nursing station clearly is an exception. If they're accepting patients for whatever reason and however they accept them, then we need to respect that as well.
Yes, go ahead.
There is the nursing station committee who is quite active and involved. And it's run on the premise that we do own the building and they supply the services to it. So it is kind of an exception to other municipalities who don't have a building such as that. McKellar, they say, in their notice, all municipal buildings. So you can't just go boldly and say all municipal buildings. So it'd be good to have a little bit of an outreach to let people know what's going on within that committee as well, and not just by across the committee and go straight to Westbury Sound Health Center. I think would be good local knowledge. Come back, of course.
So I guess we'll find out what's going on.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so just a couple of questions from the, Carol, go ahead.
With regards to the landfill, I think you should consider closing the bottle drive because people are going to be touching the bottles. And the circles.
Any thoughts about that?
I don't know,
You
most
got-
of them wear gloves.
Hmm?
A lot of the volunteers wear gloves when they're sorting bottles. They used to have to transport the bottles. I don't know.
The beer store may be shutting that program down.
Because of this.
And just one other thing, will you be updating the whitestone.ca website with all of these closures?
The answer is yes, we will,
Good.
for sure. And probably put it on Facebook too, don't we?
We typically do, yes.
Great.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, the bottles introduce an interesting scenario because they're coming from everywhere, from everyone's hands. And provided they've been out there for a week, I guess they're decontaminated to a certain extent. But to have people going in there, and Beth, you know the situation better than anyone, handling the bottles, is there a safe way to do it if there was potential contaminant?
They're contaminated anyway. Any number of knock the bottles at any time, so tuberculosis. It's all
But not-
contaminated.
Not COVID.
So, to bring in another one, what the heck? I don't know. I maybe put it out to the ones that run the bottle sheds, their level of comfort and what measures they can do to ensure their safety. I know at one point I worked with Bob to develop a policy for sorting bottles, and we did like a health and safety thing, so maybe it's something we could advise the groups that run the bottle sheds a way of making it safer during this time. But in general, there's always stuff on bottles.
Yeah, it's not a real tidy, anybody who's been in it, it's not a tidy operation. But I think we should, I think that's a very good point. We should talk to the folks who actually do it, because they may decide that you would rather not do it. And it does have an implication though for the landfill site, because unless we say to people, unless we say to the public, don't bring these here, or unless we simply put them through the compactor, which would probably cause other problems for the time being. It won't be such a big deal for the next 3 weeks because the volume of bottles coming in is low. But once you get on towards, to the end of April, it ramps up quite a lot, and the York Street in particular will just get overwhelmed with bottles if we don't either stop people from bringing them or find some other way to dispose of them, right? Sarah? May 2-4 weekend, you get 2 trailer loads of bottles, pretty much. Go ahead.
Would it maybe be appropriate to include it as one of our bullets under landfill as usual, except we won't be receiving bottles for this 3-week period? And see where we're at from there. People can hold the bottles back and bring them in 3 weeks, or some of us only take them every couple of months or a month anyway, but I guess some people like to bring their bottles every weekend, I don't know.
I just had a quick comment, and I know it's a good service you guys offer at the landfill. I remember before, the guy helped me out, and ended up coming to your place and helping you take your garbage out sometimes. You might want to tell them not to assist, not in a bad way, in a good way to protect themselves, right? You don't know what's in that garbage bag, so sick or not sick,
Yeah.
or leaving it in. Similar to the bottles.
Did you catch that?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been discussions, and there'll be more discussions this week on safety procedure, wearing gloves, what they should and shouldn't do. Helping people at the landfill is one of the nice things that we're able to do. We can't always help people when we're busy, but it's a slow time. So I would, might be helpful if you leave that with me and the road superintendent. We can talk to our staff about safety protocols, and certainly we supply gloves and we think about safety. What I was still listening, but I was looking at the March deposit in 2019 for the bottle shed, and it was low. It was $168.50. That's, I guess, how much they received. So it definitely is a quiet time. You move into April and May, it just balloons to a huge amount. So if we're thinking about the next 3 weeks, it may not be as big a concern as it might be once we move into April and then May. And of course, there's going to be a lot of other decisions made before that time comes. And it also gives us a chance to think about what the options might be. Do we want to still keep bottles and find a place to store them until we're able to sort safely? A couple of things to think about there.
Okay, thanks. One more and then we.
Yeah, I think the problem with saying you can't bring your bottles now is what are you going to do if that's the case for the entire summer? If you make the decision now, it's really hard 3 weeks from now to say, this is much worse, and we're not going to allow you to bring your bottles, right? So I'm not, I'm 6 of one and half a dozen on this one. If it's very little, then leave them up there for March and don't have the people go up and sort them for March, and then, you'll know by April, you'll know more in 3 weeks if I approach people. But if you close it down, it's pretty hard to say, now you can bring your liquor bottle when the situation is worse. And I'm more concerned that the liquor store closes, not and you'll stop the flow of the bottle.
Something totally different, but you got a public tap out here.
Yeah,
Are you going to keep that open?
it's closed right now.
Is it?
It's closed.
Do people know
Closed for the
that?
winter. Yeah, there's a sign on it.
Okay. All right.
And if you try to work it, it won't go. It should.
All right, safe enough. Thanks.
But yeah, good. Okay. So can I call the question, please? I think we got enough guidance, and I appreciate sorry it took so long, but I think it's important for us to have a good message. So Can I call the question? Those in favor of the motion, thinks that's carried. Thank you. I'll just over. I've got my notes on this one, so. Okay. That brings us to correspondence. And what we'll do, we have 6 items of correspondence, 7 items of correspondence, sorry, labeled A to G. Whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items as listed on page 4 of the agenda. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council hereby receives the correspondence items contained on page 4 of the agenda, dated March 16, 2020, for information with the following extracted for further discussion or action. So can I just very quickly go down the list and ask you if there are any you want to discuss? There are a couple of municipalities request for supports for various things. There's a complaint about the increased cost of the tourism-oriented destination signs, which we already dealt with by reducing our number of signs we were paying for. It's an update from AMO on Queen's Park, and the health unit update on COVID-19 from March 11th, and of course there are a whole bunch of much newer ones than that as of today. So, do you want to pull any of these, Councilor Lamb?
I want to just get some information on D about this municipal levy increase in 42%. I'm not sure I understand that. And I'd like to know how that affects us, because our municipal levy is quite heavy.
Was that D?
Yeah, this is from, it says North Bay, Prairie Sound District Health, and this is from Strong, that the will result in 42% increase in the municipal levy.
And then there's like that district meeting last year, just came up when the chief of the health unit, I think it was talking, and he was saying that provincial costs in municipalities beginning next year is going to be substantial.
But we got the levy, right? And consider this is going to be 42% increase. That's my real concern. What's the impact on our budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The treasurer was going to leave me some information, and it wasn't in the envelope, so she did indicate that there is an increase, but it's not a significant increase. That increase happened, and it's already built into our 2020 budget, and it's not significant for Whitestone. And unfortunately, I don't have all the details to share with you, but it's something I can follow up with you on by email. They've obviously changed. It's a change from 2570 to 3070.
No, I just noticed it says it changes in a 42% increase in the municipal levy commencing in 2021.
Right.
So it's a year out.
Yeah, but there is an increase for 2020.
No, I realize
Yeah.
that, but if going forward next year, we have to build into the budget a 42% increase, I guess we'll have to do it because that's a levy, right?
Right.
Thank you.
And that's basically what Strong is trying to head off. They're trying to get the government to reconsider the whole thing.
Well, I'll certainly support that.
Their argument basically is that, public health should be an entirely provincial expenditure, which isn't the direction things are going. But, yes.
I actually called our treasurer on this today, and she gave me the rundown on the whole spiel. And 42% is Strong's take on it. We pay a portion of $3,600,000, and Whitestone's portion is 0.83%. And that's a percentage that is applied to the 821 permanent residents. So that's the way the formula is set up. We presently pay paid in the current year, 2019, or the past year, $32,000. The increases, as she calculated, would add about 13,000 approximately to our budget, which is built in now, which is like 0.5%. So I asked her about the issue moving forward. She said, well, it's increased by that amount now, and she doesn't foresee it going up by the panicking of 42%. So hopefully it's not as significant for Whitestone as when you look at a 42% increase, like in the cost of housing living to us, why I called her. I said, well, what are we looking at here? So she could probably brief us further on that more accurately than I just did for sure. But I was somewhat relieved after I talked to her.
Okay, well, we not only pulled it for discussion, but we discussed it. Can I ask, do you wish to add our municipal support to A, B, D, or E? Or do we simply receive them information? I'm not hearing any A's, let's take it out. So can I call the question on this? And the only one that we extracted for further discussion was the okay. Can I call the question? Those in favor? Be with correspondence. Good. All right. So, councilor items. Any councilor items? Questions from the public?
There was a
Bob.
counselor.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, do you have?
Hold on, there was a counselor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can go second.
I'll go last.
No, no, you go ahead. I'm sorry I missed you.
I'll keep it brief so you can get in here quickly, Bob.
No, that's okay.
Just to inform everyone that there was a very successful fishing derby. The Rodney McPentrell did an exceptional job of putting the event on, as I could see. And because of the coronavirus and such going on, they held everything outside. Everybody was separated, fresh air, the whole works. So it was deemed to be pretty safe. Mr. Mary, you were there representing Mr. Valley. Appreciate that. And second item, landfill. We've had a couple of meetings, basically trying to put together what we brought from council, and we're talking with the road superintendent and trying to come up with some plan of attack on there. On that, we're moving along fairly well. It's going to be a challenge for sure to probably have everything in place for March 1st, or May 1st. In terms of, well, I guess the input to the public in the form of a brochure or some information, significant information item because of all the changes that are coming down. But Brian, he's working on it with us. He's a pretty keen guy when it comes to this kind of stuff. Much appreciated. He may want to comment further, but hopefully in the near future we'll have some specific information to report. I've had a couple questions asked of the potential of electronic signs, and I guess a little bit of concern that we would have a sign almost side by side, two signs. I don't know if it's a serious issue or not. I don't know how far along we are. Councilor Lamb, maybe you can add a little bit of input into the sign situation from the library's perspective and where that's at. I understand it can only be in that specific location and only satisfy that location as information goes. Is that correct?
I think that's where staff had told us. The library sign we wrote for and received the $32,000 $25,000 grant for that from the provincial government. So that's at no cost to the municipality. And, you know, particularly as the library is expanded, they feel that they need to, you know, be able to tell people the events and things like that that are on. If we choose to do something different over here, that's a different sort of purpose. But what I was led to believe is we can't have one sign. We can't. And I don't want to give up the grant. Say, well, you can't have a sign because our information is more important over here, or something, right? So I heard from people, and once I give them, it was only one person, once I gave them the explanation, they didn't seem to be satisfied. Certainly, we're proceeding on the basis of a sign, you know, being put up during or at the end of the renovation. So I don't think there's a problem with respect to setbacks from the road and things like that. I think we're pretty well. I'll check that.
So the MPO is checked out?
The initial feedback, excuse me. The initial feedback from them is that it's fine, and that was through the architect. who sort of checked that out. So I don't think we're going to have a problem.
And I'm not sure just exactly what the biggest issue was. There were 3 different people, one representing a bit of a group, but one comment was we don't want 2 huge signs, one there and one here. Right? Who knows until they're put there and whatever as to whether they would be objectionable. And I think the one comment came from when you drive into McKellar, that sign almost knocks your eyeballs out from some people's perspective. And it is pretty bright. I don't know, do we want? I guess we're.
But there is no, sorry, there isn't currently a plan to put a sign on this side, an electronic sign on this side.
I thought we had it in the budget for a sign, did we not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there's money in the budget for a sign for here. And we did that prior to the library getting their grant. That money is still in the budget, but it could be cut. So my discussions with MTO is that when you place a sign that advertises events, the advertisement on that sign can only be for the location where the sign is situated. So technically, you couldn't advertise community center events on the library sign, and you can't advertise library events on the community center sign. My sense is that the library electronic sign would be smaller than the one that we would have here, and it's simply because of the number of events and the activities that are at the community center. The MTO has no issue with 2 signs being, almost across from each other, which they won't be. There's just an application process that you go through, and you manage the setbacks, which both signs meet the setbacks at this point, and it really becomes a community decision if both signs are installed.
I appreciate the comments. It's just a general discussion here. It's not to be negative or it's on this topic.
There are specific size elements to it. The sign can only be so big. Excuse me. Otherwise, you can't do it. So it can't be a greatly huge, monstrous sort of thing.
Makes sense.
Now, what someone said to me was, if we do put an electronic sign out here, obviously, it's a lot better way to communicate than people going out and putting stuff in every day and staff time and cost of that. But if we do put something out there, they said it would be a shame to not use that sign somewhere. Put it somewhere else where it might be used. For instance, on the bunny trail or certain events, we might be able to go up and post. I think that there's something up there already, isn't there?
Yeah, there's the sandwich board.
Yeah, but I mean, we could take it out there. You don't have to put every single event on, but it would give us a better opportunity to communicate with the people, going out the bunny trails.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that one, I'm sure, in another meeting.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Bob?
Oh, yes. through you, Mr. Mayor, I just need some clarification on the community safety and well-being. Who's actually looking after it? I understand you and Michelle are figuring out who you're going to appoint to do that. Have you decided that yet, or is it still up in the air, or who's actually doing that? I didn't get anything from that.
I thought you had addressed that earlier in your comments, did you not?
Yes, yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Up until I received an email from Kathy Whitman, I think I received it last week, but I just read it on Saturday, and we had a bit of email interaction on Saturday. Kathy indicated her availability to participate. I understand the fire chief of McDougall Township is now having oversight of that committee as opposed to the fire chief of Perry Sound. And I know Kathy has a full-time job, and that would have priority. So as I'm the CEMC alternate this time, I'll talk to Kathy about being available when she's not. And I think that's sort of where we landed. At one point, we weren't sure whether Kathy was interested in it or not, and we had a couple of conversations, but it sounds to be like she is interested. So I'll follow up with Kathy and with the fire chief of McDougall, just to make sure that we have representation on that committee. But what I do understand is that it is taking a back seat at this point to the coronavirus situation. So I don't expect that there's going to be a meeting in the near future, and possibly the one that's planned in the near future may be canceled. So that's something we can manage internally.
So then from my understanding, then it's still a work in progress, we haven't decided, is that what I'm hearing, or?
Well, our understanding was that your wife was going to be the representative when they do have meetings and so on. She agreed to do that, I think.
Okay, well, I'll have to ask her, there's some confusion on actually who's running this, who's going to be looking after this. So I think me, Michelle, and her will have to have a meeting and sit down and decide whoever is going to run this. So we're all on the same page.
Well, that's not a bad idea, of course, but just understand, this is a project that is, as you know, is being undertaken by a bunch of municipalities to come up with a common response when they actually get to work on it, which might be a while, but to have a common plan rather than have all 7 of us each try and put something together. And so this is a working committee that sits down and discusses the things that should go in the plan. And, but it will eventually come back to this council to be adopted.
Sure.
It's not a fire department thing. It's just the municipality needs a representative, and some of the people on the committee are fire chiefs, and some of them are CAMCs, and some of them are both, and some of them are other individuals.
And I really said that's why I asked for clarity.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll have to figure that out.
And again, once they actually get going, they were trying to get started right away until the COVID ID kind of jumped the queue and got to the front of it, right?
Sure.
So that's where it is.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anything else? Yes.
What I just want to say, I'll make a commitment to outreach to Kathy. I don't know what shift she's on. I know it varies, and put together a meeting with Kathy to make sure that she's doing that. And I know Bob is attending other meetings to do with coronavirus that the fire chiefs are handling. So we'll keep the information flowing to council.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to go in camera? Anything else that anybody has to say? Grace? No? Can I get a motion to adjourn to a closed session, please? All in favor? And then, sorry, who seconded it?
I'm fine with that.
Councilor Barnabas is, do you wish a short break or are you?
5 minutes?
We'll give you till 5 after 9.
Back to the story.
Last day is in there.
If you're a Carol, did you see Trump's the other day with all these people behind him? Yeah, I'm not sure if it's up in my ear or not. At least if it's small. You thought you could?
Or if you want, you can phone me tomorrow.
It was, I'd already left for the day, and I just kind of glanced at it.
I think I probably don't think the word is completely different than what it can be.
Oh, and, oh, that's oh, you sent him a copy of the,
Yeah, I just,
oh, and then, oh, there's too many words.
no, I think it's, if you
The
want.
the only thing that was changed from a resolution that John Jackson sent us was that last sentence. Dave, I'm sorry that this, Christie is a, so, yeah, I haven't given him the rest.
See ya.
I know nothing like what led to it, I'm not sure if I didn't put, well, I could do the copy of it. Pretty.
No, I think, yeah. I think tomorrow, I think all it is, probably the word.
Maybe now's the time to put out the word.
But obviously,
You must bring your beer bottles in the case.
I don't know why I kept
Your
on.
hands and a bag numbered like 100.
That would make
And
life
the
so
whiskey
much
bottles-
easier.
Whiskey bottles, when you're buying your bottles of hooch, you
I-
get boxes.
Or is it
Yeah, but I haven't talked.
do down south?
Fit into the
liquor
landfill
box?
in boxes. Like, I don't know how you guys do sometimes. They were just a mountain of stuff.
That report.
Whoever's there, I'm starting to work on that, on cave this summer and all that.
Oh, yeah, John,
5126.
yeah.
People throw
the
their,
crazy thing
people
is
throw their
Greg
kitchen
wanted
garbage
that-
and empty
oh,
their ashtray,
God,
other stuff in the same
That 5126
container, right?
is
The
our
bottles are in cans.
Publish a
See,
survey of it.
Yeah, so
You don't
they're
have to
all
ask. It doesn't have to be in a
No, no, so I
resolution, you
think-
can get.
Carlos,
I think
viral
it's
thing going around.
I'm not a planner.
Yeah,
I'm certainly not.
One more thing.
If they ask for it, they already have to give it. That's part of the whole process. So you see, we're doing 5126.
Oh, really?
You to do it, but we are, you know, it can be done very easy. Where's the whole thing go? The whole
Oh.
thing go.
I guess I'd get another copy, couldn't I?
The whole thing go.
Because it's
cleaning
not
up
approved.
Before we talk permanent.
Oh, you just
seminar,
have to-
give
Yeah.
it, don't give it. It gives a whole bunch of added complications around it.
Oh, it will undoubtedly and unequivocally result in an appeal.
Right, because of word is added to, but I think it's not yours, that's at the planning. So it can't be at the planning board side.
Okay, all right.
So we can talk tomorrow.
Yeah, I need to,
Because
yeah.
my guess is it's a really simple thing,
Yeah.
and I still think it's simple.
Okay, all right.
And now's not the time.
So,
Yeah, we'll move it to another meeting.
Are you?
You guys are trying.
I think it's a, I mean, and that's at 9:44 on this end. 9:44 PM. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. We are back in open session. So, whereas council is in receipt of the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 meeting, and whereas there are no errors, omissions, or amendments, be it resolved that the minutes of the closed session meeting held on Tuesday, February 18th, 2020 be adopted as presented and the reading thereof dispensed with. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
Okay, I got Councilor McEwen first, second by Councilor Lamb. So I'm just going to write some, well, all right, all those in favor? Okay, that's the minutes approved. Just need to write something in here. seconder for us to ratify the agreement? Moved by Councilor Wood, seconded by Councilor Lamb. Do you want to?
Yeah.
All right. I'll read it to you. Whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone is in receipt of the memorandum of agreement for a renewal collective agreement for the Canadian Union of Public Employees and its local 5157 in the period April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2023. And whereas the municipality of Whitestone has received from the Kootenai National Representative on Friday, March 13, 2020, that the members of Local 5157 have ratified the memorandum of agreement. Therefore, be it resolved that Council does hereby ratify the memorandum of agreement, and that the Chief Administrative Officer / Clerk be authorized to implement the terms and provisions as negotiated, and further that the required documents be executed by the Mayor and the Chief Administrative Officer Clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. Good job, folks. Yes, Donald, thank you for your negotiating. Thank you. Confirming bylaw, mover and seconder. Moved by Councilor Lamb, seconded by, okay, Councilor Woods. All those in favor? Thank you. And last but not least, should be adjournment. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councilor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Woods. That the meeting be adjourned at